I'm Luca Coelho. I attend to Humanities Prep Academy. I'm a junior and I'm also 16 years old. I recently presented my math PBAT. It is called Will You Remain Standing? And the name of the problem is the last person standing. And it's essentially, I guess you could imagine a group of people in a circle. What you do is you go around a circle, and as you go, you take away every other person in the circle. So for example, if we're standing here in a group of 4, I say that I stay inside, I'll take you out of the circle, you stay inside, I'll take you out of the circle, I stay inside, and you take out of the circle. At one point, we're gonna get to one person, and that will be the winner.
And there's a particular way in which you get to remain in the circle or you are out of the circle. And the problem was trying to determine if there were 1,000 people in one of these circles, which numbered person would be left. And then Luca was able to take it into some other interesting places. He had some of his own questions that he explored after analyzing the problem.
When I looked at that, it was pretty complicated at first. It's kind of like a facade. Like, I was super confused. And it's very challenging. The whole purpose of the problem is to find out who is the person standing before you even go through everybody. Like, create kind of an equation or trying to generalize it. I found, like, I guess a few different patterns. They don't overlap that much. They're completely separated. One goes like towards the logarithm side of math. The other goes to like just a quadratic function. And there's one that is just like a linear function, which is pretty simple. Every pattern I saw, I wanted to understand why there was one. All of those like multiple equations I had to do, they were pretty challenging. But I think the worst one was understanding why a multiple of 2, a power of 2, would the first person would remain standing. I think that was the hardest one because like I found the equation and I understood it, but like, okay, how? You know?
Paying attention to the ways in which he described and explained the different connections that he was working with, because I wanted to see how clear those were, how simple they were. Generally, I find that someone who has a really deep understanding of something is able to state what they understand and the connection between different ideas quite simply and succinctly.
So what I did, I like analyzed the game, I played the game, I see how the game works, and then afterwards I tried to gather as much information, as many patterns as I can, as much information that the problem gives me. And then like I make an inference or two and I try it and it doesn't work.
I mean, he mentioned that he started looking at the problem, he was confused, but then he persevered, and I think because he looked at the different patterns, any patterns that he could see, and used different representations for his problem, I think that actually helped him into seeing the big pictures.
I would get those answers and I would create an equation that explains all of those patterns. You really have to use like the simplicity of math to find this like complex understanding behind it.
It was really a lot of fun to get to read your paper. Because I've done the problem before, it took me to some new places, which I appreciate.
It took me to some new places.
In preparation for being an evaluator on the PBAT panel, I read the paper. I've done the problem, and then I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out what it was he was doing. Where mathematically can I pose a question that would challenge him to go deeper into his thinking?
So I've got a question based on, you talked a lot about your patterns. So if you were number 121, so in the circle, if you're the 121st person,
okay,
and you wanted to be the last person standing, how many people would you need in the circle in order for that to be the case?
121? I would have to do the math. You did it quick.
Yeah, just did.
Thank you.
I pose that question because there isn't a way based on the formulas or the equations that he developed in his paper that question could be answered, but there's a pattern in his table that could help him answer that.
So essentially, if it's a power of 2, the rule keeps going, because if it's a power of 2, it divides by 2 multiple times until you get to the first person standing. But if you don't have a power of 2, it doesn't. It changes the rule at one point. That's why it's so complicated if you just give me a number to find it, because I need to like go through the process of the closest power of 2, which I don't know. That's why I'm trying to find it here. Cool.
when we're facilitating, you draft a version of the question you want to ask before you get there, and then you throw it out there and you kind of see how it lands with him and what points of clarification need to be made. But the most important thing, I think, is being patient.
Essentially what happens is that if you have a power of 2 and you keep going around the circle, you basically, like, every time you go around the circle, you cut half the people in the circle off. So as I spoke, they tried to see how I did it, and they wanted to get that, like, out of me. So they asked me questions, but I was just like, wait, I can just do the math. Okay. So this is weird because I actually haven't tried doing it like this yet, but I don't know if it's gonna work or not. But I do have an answer. I would say it's number 115, like 115.
Now, what is 115 answer? What question?
The answer is, I guess, what person was the last person standing.
If what?
If we have 128 people. Wait.
What's the question?
Yeah.
Who's gonna get it?
So I have 121.
So if there's 121 people, the last person is.
It has to be
115. But you are person 121.
Got it. So I need to get to me.
You.
So I need 124 people.
There you go.
Okay, go.
Nicely done. Can you explain how what you wrote down there?
Oh yeah, sure.
Pushed him to think about aspects of the problem that were embedded in his work but weren't explicit in his work, and it was really great to see him work through that on the spot.
I got to the power of 2 that I needed, which is 128, and I know that equals 1, right? So 128, I created a little table, and then I put 1. And I know that 127, which is the previous number, is 127, because I did the rule thingy here. Yeah.
In page 5 of your paper, you get into that.
Right, yeah.
That table.
So I get to 127, and like the first time you go around the circle, you wipe out all of the numbers that are even. So all the even numbers are out. So I go by 2. I go from this odd number to the next odd number. So I just subtracted 2 every time I went down. So 128 equals 1, 127, 127. So I went down to 126. I subtracted 2 because the even number is not there. So that goes to 125. And then 125, I go down to 123. And then 124, I get to the number I am, 121, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well done. Something you hadn't done in your paper.
I hadn't done in my paper.
But you were able to figure it out.
Yeah, but it's surprising.
Those patterns, they pay off so well.
They do.
Nice.
They were just trying to push me forward, but at the same time, they were excited to see me succeed. And I was definitely prepared.
What is unique about the power of 2 as compared to every other even number? In terms of understanding.
Yeah, so like I was explaining, the thing about power of 2 is that if you have a huge power of 2, like a huge number, and if you divide that number by 2 multiple times, it'll keep going.
It was fascinating to see his excitement, his passion about what he was doing. And I think by really understanding the concept and going in depth, ownership, like he really mastered what he was talking about.
What about having an odd number of people standing in the circle messes up your pattern?
Who stays in and who stays out. So like, for example, number 1 here, as you can see on page 9.
So the impact I think that it has on a student when an external evaluator comes in, it's an audience. It says that other people have carved out time in their day to be here to hear you share your mathematical thinking, and so it raises the value of your work. That mathematics is something that communities of people talk about.
I was like very proud because I came from Brazil 2 years ago. I came in January of 2017, and I knew the basic English. I could communicate and I guess get around. My vocabulary was very low. I wasn't really good at grammar as well. It was really hard for me. So I just wanted to get my ideas through, which was pretty good. And I think I lost that fear for sure.
So at the end of the presentation, then the evaluators get together and we have to come to a consensus on how the oral presentation will be rated based on the rubric.
We look at the math rubric. There are categories between problem solving, communication, connection, etc. And we go back into how Luca presented, and we grade him based on that rubric.
Reasoning and proof.
Yeah. I mean, I give him also an outstanding for that. His reasoning, like the way he took us through all his reasoning and thinking was, I think, deep.
I agree with that.
I agree with that. Outstanding. Yeah, me too. Totally owned it. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't need to. He wasn't like looking in his work to remember what he was doing, but he did know where was the information he needed to be able to reference to help him explain.
Great.
Our conclusion as a panel was that Luca did an outstanding job. His problem solving took on multiple paths, had utilized multiple representations.
His explanation was thorough. He explained his thinking. That was really what fascinated me.
I had the same teacher, Gabby, for the past 2 years, and one of the things she had told me like 2 years ago is like, Luca, you're really good at math, but you can't explain it, which is like a major thing, and you need to work on that. You need to like read more, or like do this and that. And to hear that now I'm able to explain it, it's pretty good. So I'm pretty sure I'll do better in like next projects in like college than I would have done without this presentation.
He made meaningful connections between the various representations and his own questions. And so with all that considered, I thought he did a really outstanding job. I was very proud of him.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.